Someone recently asked me to make a video about 7 former Premier League teams who'll never return to the division. If you were that someone, thanks for the suggestion, but I was feeling a bit utopian at the time, and the idea that any team will never return to the Premier League seemed a bit depressing, especially as a long-suffering Hull City fan still harbouring dreams of a takeover, multiple Premier League titles, and a Champions League in the not-too-distant future. Instead then, and since those included are likely to be rather similar, I thought I'd just take a look at which former Premier League teams are currently doing the worst. That is to say, of every team to have played top-flight football in England since 1992, who are the lowest ranked within the Football League pyramid right now? Well, that's the question, and here are the answers. Here are the 7 lowest ranked former Premier League teams. Blackpool. There are 7 former Premier League teams in League One this season, and to be honest, the order of them is likely to shift a fair bit between now and the end of the season, especially given the fact that we're only 8 games into the campaign. As things stand, Blackpool sit in 17th place in England's 3rd tier, which sees them slot into 7th place in this 7. Blackpool enjoyed their heyday during the 1950s, which, ironically enough, is also probably when the town of Blackpool was in its heyday as well. I'm only joking, good people of Blackpool, you'll always be the Vegas of the North to me, and I'd have loved to have visited for an away day this season were it not for the COVID restrictions. From the end of World War II right up to 1967, Blackpool were a top-flight team, famously boasting the likes of Stanley Matthews and Stan Mortensen at one time, finishing as top-flight runners-up and lifting the FA Cup in 1953. The Tangerines' only top-flight stint during the Premier League era came under Ian Holloway, exactly 10 years ago, and they were a real breath of fresh air. Despite winning the hearts and minds of many, Blackpool didn't win enough points to stay in the Premier League, and as their owners stripped assets from the club, the Seasiders tumbled down through the divisions. Having previously dropped into League 2, Blackpool are at least now back in League 1, they have an exciting young head coach, and they're no longer owned by a convicted rapist, so there seem to be brighter times ahead. Wigan Athletic. Staying in League 1 and in the North West, tied on points with Blackpool and just 1 place below them due to a -1 goal difference, in 6th place, we have Wigan Athletic. In truth, Wigan are bitterly unfortunate to be in League 1 this season, having only been relegated from the Championship last season due to a 12-point deduction. Unlike Blackpool, Wigan have not had an illustrious footballing past. When Blackpool were winning the FA Cup and challenging for league titles in the 1950s, Wigan were playing in the now defunct Lancashire Combination League. In fact, it was only in 1978 that Wigan joined the Football League, entering the old 4th Division. In 1995, the club was taken over by Dave Whelan while still in the 4th tier. It took Whelan just 10 years to turn Wigan into a Premier League team, enjoying a meteoric rise, although perhaps the most impressive part of his reign was managing to keep the club in the top flight for 8 years, as well as lifting the FA Cup. Wigan were relegated in 2013, and they have since yo-yoed between League 1 and the Championship. Swindon Town. The last League 1 team in this 7, Swindon Town, currently occupy 21st place in English football's 3rd tier, having won promotion from League 2 as champions last season. Founded in 1879, Swindon are among the oldest teams in the Football League, although they didn't actually join the Football League until 1920, when they still had legendary centre-forward Harold Fleming leading that line. Swindon played top-flight football for the only time either before or during the Premier League era in the 1993-94 season, having won promotion thanks largely to the player management of Glenn Hoddle. Unfortunately, Hoddle left the summer after the Robins won promotion, and that meant Swindon lost not just their manager, but also arguably their most important player. In their only Premier League season, the club conceded a record 100 goals, finishing bottom of the table with only 5 wins to their name. In the near 3 decades since, Swindon have competed mostly in the 3rd tier, although they're no strangers to League 2 as well. Now managed by former Leicester City star Richie Wellens, Swindon narrowly won the prematurely halted League 2 title on a points per game basis last season, and League 1 survival will be the aim this season. Bradford City. Dropping down into League 2 for the first time in this 7, Bradford City were relegated to England's 4th tier during the 2018-19 campaign. The best supported team in the division last season, Bradford's Valley Parade home ground, could hold more than 25,000 fans, which is more than most teams in the 2 divisions above them, and the Bantams average over 14,000 for home games even in the 4th tier. Bradford played plenty of top-flight football before and immediately after World War I, and they even won the FA Cup in 1911. Following World War II though, the club tended to spend most of their time in the Football League's basement division, at least up until the 1980s. It was in 1999, under the guidance of Paul Jewell, that Bradford won promotion to the Premier League, thanks to a trio of £1 million plus signings in the form of Lee Mills, Dean Windass and Stuart McCall. The last of those three, Stuart McCall, recently returned to Valley Parade to take charge of the Bantams for the third time. Bradford spent 2 seasons in the Premier League during the turn of the millennium, but it took less than a decade for the club to find themselves right back in the 4th tier. Bradford haven't even played Championship football since 2004, when the division wasn't even known as the Championship, but the support is there for the club to compete, at least in England's 2nd tier. Bolton Wanderers. Taking us back to Greater Manchester in 3rd place, Bolton Wanderers are probably the quote-unquote biggest team in this 7. It doesn't feel like that long ago that Bolton were enjoying European nights against the likes of Marseille, Bayern Munich and Atletico Madrid. In the 2007-08 season, Bolton reached the round of 16 of the UEFA Cup, where they were only narrowly beaten by Sporting Club de Portugal. From 1999 to 2007, Bolton were managed by Sam Allardyce, who managed to bring star names like Nicolas Anelka, Fernando Hierro and JJ Okocha to what was then known as the Reebok Arena. That was the club's best period since the 1950s and the days of Nat Lofthouse, although their most successful era of all came in the 1920s, when the club won the FA Cup thrice. Bolton's decade of Premier League football came to an end under Owen Coyle in 2012, and the Trotters were relegated with a sickening amount of debt. By 2015, following 3 seasons in the Championship, Bolton were almost £200 million in debt. It's a miracle that the club has managed to stay afloat in many respects, and in 2016, they were relegated to League One. Bolton actually bounced straight back into the Championship, but following 2 seasons in the 2nd tier, the club recorded back-to-back relegations down into the EFL's basement division. Their most recent relegation, last season, came following a 12-point deduction after the club entered administration, although they also finally managed to get rid of their owner, Ken Anderson. 8 games into the current season, Bolton found themselves in 18th place in League 2. Oldham Athletic. It's worth noting that 5 of the 7 teams in this 7 are northern teams, with other northern clubs like Barnsley, Sheffield Wednesday, Sunderland and Hull City coming close, and that's generally reflective of a pattern that we have seen in English football over the past 30 years. A number of northern clubs have struggled, one of whom has been Oldham Athletic. In fairness, Oldham are not historically powerhouses of English football, with their heyday, rather like Bradford's, having come way back in the early 20th century. The club finished as top-flight runners-up in the 1914-15 campaign, missing out on the title to Everton by just a solitary point, and following relegation in 1923, Oldham wouldn't play top-flight football again until 1992. Latics fans will hope they don't have to wait another 69 years for a return to the top flight this time around, but it's already been 24 years, and in truth, a return to the Premier League doesn't seem likely anytime soon. Oldham's 2 Premier League seasons were the first 2 Premier League seasons, as they narrowly avoided relegation once before making the drop. The club hasn't even played 2nd tier football since 1997, and following 14 consecutive seasons in League 1, Oldham were relegated to League 2 in 2019. They are currently in the League 2 relegation zone after 8 games, under the management of Harry Kewell, which puts them 2nd in this video. Wimbledon FC. The lowest ranked ex-Premier League team, given that they technically no longer exist, has to be Wimbledon FC. A fascinating football club that exploded into life during the 1980s before being dissolved to grave unpopularity in an attempt to move the club over 50 miles north of South London in the early 2000s. There's a lot to unpick when it comes to the Dons. A non-league club for most of their history, Wimbledon entered the Football League in 1977, and they were either promoted or relegated every season for 6 consecutive seasons between 1978 and 1984. The Wimbledon team of the 1980s and 90s, which won promotion to the top flight in 1986, would become known as the Crazy Gang due to the eccentricity of many of their players off the pitch, along with their style of play on it. The club's finest moment came in 1988, when they defeated Liverpool to lift the FA Cup, and they spent 14 consecutive seasons in the top flight in total. In 2001, Wimbledon announced plans to relocate the club to Milton Keynes, which was met with angry protests not just among Wimbledon fans, but football fans right across England. The FA approved the proposals though, and Milton Keynes Dons took Wimbledon's place in League 1 beginning in the 2004-05 season. In response, Wimbledon fans founded their own club, AFC Wimbledon, and were forced to start out in the 10th tier, 7 divisions below the club from Milton Keynes. Almost 2 decades on, MK Dons and AFC Wimbledon now both compete in League 1, and Wimbledon are currently 4 points ahead of MK Dons in the 3rd tier of English football. So that is it for today's video. Thank you as ever for tuning in. Apologies if I still sound a bit under the weather. Please do give the video a like if you enjoyed it, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for HITC Sevens. You can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram, where the username is just @HITC Sevens on both platforms.